Time for another part of the miniature to be demonstrated. So I'm gonna use the same technique. I'm gonna show how to paint the shoulder. And as you can see, I have already painted out the gold onto the rest of the miniature. So you can see how it looks in its whole. So I'll show the paints again. Royal purple and the Thamar black. You can use any black. I'll add some mahogany. For that, I'll use some dark sea blue and some glaze, of course. A last step that I forgot to show is that I use a little bit of mahogany to bring back some hue to the gold, to make it more vibrant and warm. It's about 50-50 purple and blue. A third black. And here's the part where I lose a little bit of color. I add some mahogany to this to make it more warm and vibrant. When I'm finished with all the highlights and shadows, I will go back with a very glazed down mahogany and paint up some. Of course, I'll go with some more purple in this. We want it to be more purplish than bluish, so more red. So we have guided our shadows with our airbrush already, so we can just intensify these areas, and we'll apply some more around here and a little bit here and some here as well, to sort of making a visible light bounce here and here and up here. And up here we're going to rework with some gold as well. Also going to paint this little part here. So I want this to be shaded down. And also picking out all the details with the shadow. I'm also going to paint over the flat surface that are going to be another color. Just to distinguish the details from each other. So we can imagine that it's getting brighter here and darker down here. It's getting brighter the more towards the upper part we go on this stripe here, this trim. So I'm gonna shade down the lower part of this trim. And a little bit of a small shade here. I'm gonna intensify this shade over here a little bit more as well. And as I probably mentioned in the previous video, you can have a lot of patience when doing this. I made the entire armor today, and it took some time. I also done the other arm. I probably showed in another video before this one. So yeah, a lot of patience for good results. Or bad if you don't like them. Paint around the raised area to make it more defined. Get some inside here as well. So the main idea later, when I'm going to paint all the gems and the cloth here and the paint on the shoulder pads, is I'm going to contrast the yellow and purple. And that is done with greens and blues. So those will make an excellent choice when painting gold like this. So I have to give many of the shadows a second coat of paint. Didn't get enough shadow onto this part, so I have to lay down a couple of layers to intensify that. To define shadow some more. I want to demonstrate how the light falls on the upper part and that the lower part is turning inwards and misses the light a little bit. Now we'll do the darkest and deepest shade in the recessed areas. This is to get the clear definition of details, as I might have explained in the first video as well. Something I have to really give some applause to is the well-defined details on these miniatures. Not only that, all the swirls and other great small things that are going on onto the armor, but they are visible. They are so crisp that the paint just flows right into the resisted areas and around the details as if it were meant to be. So they are raised up perfectly and have that great edge that cooperates well with the brush. If you want to feel the old plastic detailing that was back in the day when I was painting, you can just pick up an old Lizardman skink from '96. Then you know you have to paint out the detail yourself quite a lot of the time with brush precision. The paint will not flow as easily onto the details of those miniatures. Elven Gold. If you have too much paint on your brush, always wipe it off on a piece of cloth or paper. If you have too much, it will create puddles on your mini. So highlight all the edges and work up some of the darker areas, blend together, and make even bridges between the dark and the light. And that's also why we're using mahogany later on, because we lose some of the red tones in the armor. So we need to rework those. When painting these small details, I like to leave a little bit of them more dark to demonstrate that the light bounces on those small areas as well. Gonna intensify the gold here. As we used the airbrush earlier, the gold doesn't get 100% opacity onto the mini itself, so we have to intensify that with another layer if we want a perfectly solid surface of the Elven Gold we used earlier with the airbrush. That's my phone. Don't pay attention to that. Not a good tip when painting is to throw away your phone. That shit distracts you. My god. So a tip that I use sometimes, and sometimes I forget. It's an addiction. It's unused cigarette smoking. You can see this on these small little, let's call them ornaments, lines, little twirly details. I'll leave a little bit of darkness to make them look a bit more interesting and more alive, if you could call them that. More attached to the real world. can see that we are getting clear differences between the dark and the light now. That's what we're going for. And when painting with gold, as you can see here, I messed up a little bit. It will be really visible since the pigments really shows on normal paints. So you have to get your lines pretty straight, or otherwise the paint strokes will be very visible and it will not look that even. And anomalies is very visible to the human eye, or I don't know if I can call it anomalies, but things that go off the regular patterns will be very eye-catching. So keep that in mind when you're painting, to not get any lines off and just look weird, especially when painting faces, since our brain immediately recognizes facial patterns, and if something is off with them, it will straight away notice. So when doing these little transitions here, for example, they're quite small, so you have to be very precise with your brush and have a very decent amount of a very small amount of paint on the brush, so you can control it better. And always add a couple of extra layers instead of trying to get it all at once. A couple of thin coats is always better than one thick coat. Highlight all the edges. Since most of them always catches a little bit of light. Citrine Alchemy. I'm going to improve my light setup in 2020, because some of these lamps are just getting in my way. So I've looked at the new lamps for better viewing. Maybe a brighter and better picture as well. will see. But mostly for my own sake. So highlight all the edges as before. But we're also going to make a little bit of a small and very transparent layer, very low opacity. The surface here, just to catch some of that reflection in the armor, especially one here. Yeah, that's nice. A little bit here as well. Here. But that's very, very easy to fix, fortunately. And this is where it pays off to leave a little bit of dark on these small little ornaments. But the highlights become more visible when you do it like that. So every little detail counts. And it also helps with the balance on the gold. We don't want to get too much of the light, we don't want to get too much of the dark. So always think about balance. That's why it never helps just knowing the paints. You have to know your color theories and your techniques. A lot of experience, actually, but also color balance. That's very important. And always a good portion of problem solving as well. And trying to come up with new painting schemes or other cool things that will look great in a miniature. You have to figure out how to apply it in the best possible way. Bits. Just gonna put my glasses on. So now I'm going to balance out paints a little bit with this mahogany. I'm gonna make it quite thin, so I don't want it to cover anything. I want all the shadows and highlights to remain in their place, but I will just close the bridges between them. Make it a little bit intense, the redness of the paints. So I will apply this where I see a little bit of shadow going towards a brighter surface. A little bit too much there. Just to balance out the sort of bridges between them. Adding some nice contrasting warm vibrant shade. As you can see, it lifts the model up a little bit. You don't need much, it's just a little extra. So, and this is something you can do with a lot of paints. You can just add a little bit of green or blue or red and intensify and bring forth the color you have applied a little bit more and make it more interesting to look at.